So for this video, I wanted to sort of reflect and obviously give my own opinion piece on the subject of voice acting in video games. And I'm probably going to sound a bit contradictory uh, in some parts because, I would love to do voice acting in video games myself. And just thinking back over the years, I want to look at, how far we've come or how far the industry has come and where we are as gamers, stuff we grew up with. Starting back to, let's say, my first system was the NES, the original Nintendo, and obviously that didn't have any room with the technology, any room on the cartridges for voiceovers, any of that. But they were really fun games, and whatever text boxes that you saw on screen, you filled in those voices with your own imagination. And I think that being my first foray into that medium, it just stuck with me through the years. And so, throughout the different systems, I always liked being able to use my own imagination to fill in whatever dialogue was showing up in the games on screen. When technology made the next jump to the 16-bit era, Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis for America, if the company who made the game was able to fit a soundbite or two, if they had the room, into the game, it was just a bit here and a bit there.
Sega! Donkey be coming back here now.
Right.
And even if it could be repeated, our brains and imaginations filled in the rest with that exact sound. It's like, okay, this is what that voice would sound like here and there. And so it was very tough to put more in there if you didn't have the room. And some developers, I don't know exactly how it worked because I'm not an engineer. I didn't physically make the games or the cartridges. But some of them were able to allocate more memory to the game. And that's probably a good indicator of why they were so expensive at the time. And I don't mean to get off on a sort of tangent here, just my personal experience, growing up with the 16-bit generation. I thought that was like the golden age of everything. And so it still holds a special place in here. Jumping ahead a few years from the 16-bit to the 64-bit generation, case in point, when the Nintendo 64 came out, and all of a sudden, not only were games 3D, I don't want to talk about that technology itself, only for the acting portion, but suddenly characters like Mario,
it's me, Mario!
Suddenly there was even more room to put more sound bites in. And while, it's Mario and didn't have a whole lot of dialogue, those sound bites like, or, and even, it was fun, but it wasn't too much that it took away from what your imagination could do. And then the PlayStation, and more specifically with the RPGs, like, Final Fantasy VII, the big one, or Wild Arms. Granted, they may not have had the room to put some voiceover sound bites in those, and that's fine. RPGs at that time were still, let your imagination make up the voices for each of these characters. And that's what I loved about it, from the, Super Nintendo into the PlayStation, those Final Fantasy games specifically, just because that was the RPG series that I grew up with. And the little bits from Final Fantasy Tactics, which did have a few sound bites. From from all the data that was already on that one disc, that would give you, just enough to think, okay, yeah, this is how this person would sound here and there. As I got into the PlayStation 2 era, in 2001 is when I bought the PS2, and my first game for that was Final Fantasy X. Suddenly, because of the technology improvements and graphics and what a game could do with camera work, my own personal feelings on that particular video game was, at the time, I thought the acting and the voices were terrible. It's like, I read the dialogue and I'm thinking, this is not how, in my mind, I would have delivered this line, or the inflection and the timbre of the voice. It sounds wrong. It sounds a bit off. And now in hindsight, looking at where the voice actors are now, like, what's his name? James Arnold Taylor, who did the voice. Yeah. That laugh too. Looking at his career now, a great voice actor. So hindsight being 2020, looking back, I started thinking, well, maybe it wasn't the actors, maybe it was the voice direction that they were given to do. There's a lot of factors that can come into play here when you're localizing a video game from Japan over to America. So there's probably some details that I don't know about. This is just me speaking as a consumer, with the final product that I got. So not necessarily all role-playing games, and not necessarily all of the games during the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox generation. Not hating on Microsoft, I just never owned an Xbox at the time. Some games, and maybe it depended on the genre of games, probably did, action adventure, the platformers, a scream here and a grunt there. Okay, that's fine, that's cool. But whole scenes and segments of dialogue, somewhere along the way, it felt like my imagination for part of this game wasn't in control anymore. And combine that with the camera work that would zoom in on a character from a certain angle. I'm like, okay, that's not how I imagined this happening. And it's like, I know they're trying to tell a story, but it also felt kind of forced on me as the consumer, as the player of a game. I was like, well, I don't sort of feel in complete control here. Or I'd like to see something different, not just that one specific close-up that's used as a cheap plot device to move the story along. I don't know. Again, just an opinion. My opinion can change too. It's okay. Actually, it just dawned on me, thinking about some action games, the voice acting in Grand Theft Auto, Grand Theft Auto 3 and Vice City. It's like, whoa. Hey, here's some dialogue that flows very well from one person speaking to the other, and they're not just speaking slowly, waiting to turn, and the sprite, opening its mouth again. It was almost exactly like listening to the dialogue in a film, which is what those video games were taking from and alluding to. All the inspiration that they took from movies that they sort of made into these games, not counting the violence and all that other stuff in the game, but the voices, it was like, whoa, like these are really interesting characters because they're acted so well. So that's a case where I think the voice acting definitely worked for that era of video games. Now, moving ahead to the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 and more PC, gradually getting in PC ports of games. Let's take another example from the Rockstar game, Red Dead Redemption.
I think there's some school children down the way you can go and frighten.
And Grand Theft Auto 4 even.
So.
But big budget games like these, they can afford to take their time and really make sure the voices and the acting and the performances are top notch. Maybe this is psychologically speaking, I'm not sure. In those instances, I wasn't really thinking of, oh, I'd like to just read the dialogue pop up on screen and fill in my own voice or my own idea of a voice into these characters because it was performed so well. I accepted it for what it was. And I thought they were fantastic performances. The voices sounded great. The cadence, the timbre, the rhythm, it worked. And PC games like Mass Effect, even though you had the option to stop and start, dialogue options, and not even Mass Effect, Knights of the Old Republic, I think even before that, that was a good bit, even though it said line of dialogue, then waited a bit. The delivery was good, so we accepted it then. The point being, technology grew another leap and bound, and the writing in video games, now, the PlayStation 3, and even now for the PS4 and this current generation, and the Xbox One, I won't forget to include it, even though I don't own one. I think where we are now, in terms of technology and how we absorb all the information in the media and this particular medium of gaming, there's really good storytelling, and now studios have got very good writers. It's not that we don't have to use our imaginations for these voices anymore. It's the fact that the voice acting, the direction, and the performances have just gotten so much better now. And even the much panned by some. Well, I should say almost every game is going to have people who like it. You're going to have people who don't like it. But Final Fantasy 15, I took the game for what it was. I didn't get it when it first came out. I got it after the patches. The voice acting in that one had improved a lot since, 10 and even 12, where I didn't really believe anybody. I didn't care what anyone was saying except for the actor who played the character of Balthier. It's like, that is some natural sounding suaveness. And I didn't play 13 at all. But, 15 was, for all the rest of the bumpy ride that game was for a lot of people, I think the way the lines were delivered and the voice acting was good. I was like, yeah, I wish I could be in one of these games now. Each game is different. Each direction is different. I'm curious as to how involved the directors are, or the voice directors, when they're translating and localizing. How involved is everybody in that sound booth? And are some of the takes that we hear in the final product, is that the best one that was recorded in the sound booth or not? I don't know. I'm curious because I know there's lots of behind the scenes work that I don't know about, but I'd like to find out more, and I just think it's cool where we are now. I can't go over every game in existence. I haven't played every one. I haven't played all the popular ones. I'm just going through the games I played. I don't know if we'd consider them celebrities, characters in games like Nathan Drake in Uncharted. Now the improvements have been done to the Tomb Raider franchise, or Saints Row. I played, specifically the ones I played were Saints Row the third and Saints Row 4. Those talk about absurdism and just wacky balls to the wall, have fun, do whatever you want. And that was also totally conveyed in the acting as well. It's like, why not? You know, when you break the fourth wall and you know that you can break the rules in a game and you have fun with it, you can tell the actors were having fun in that. That was another case where it's like, oh, I sat back and enjoyed it. You know, I didn't have to complain that my imagination couldn't fill in the voices. Didn't have to in that case. That's where we are now. Leave a comment down below if, you know, there was a time where you liked or didn't like that aspect of a game. If, you know, the voices were good or bad, or if you thought it should have been less or more, if you took it for what it was, you know, leave a comment down below. Also, if you like this video, hit that little thumbs up button. If you didn't like it, hit the thumbs down twice. And subscribe if it tickles your fancy. Be excellent, and I'll see y'all in the next one.